Okay, what a wonderful day, everyone. On behalf of the International Academy for Quality, welcome to today's IAQ Live Webinar. This is part of our 60th anniversary celebration, where we honor the past and shape the future of quality. Today's conversation sits at the intersection of quality, sustainability, and responsibility. In 2015, the world aligned around a shared ambition, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, right? A bold vision of progress, a commitment to a better future. And yet, as we look at the data today, a more difficult question emerges. Are we truly moving forward or simply moving slower toward the same risks? So, this session invites us to pause, to reflect, and to confront reality with clarity because quality at its core has always been about truth, about seeing systems as they are and improving them for the better. So, today we are privileged to be joined by someone who has spent decades at the forefront of quality thinking. We have Willy Vandenbrande. He brings over 35 years of experience in quality management, from industry to global thought leadership. He is an academician of IAQ, an ASQ fellow, former chair of the Quality and Planet Earth Concerns think tank, and a recognized voice in sustainability and quality economics. His work challenges us to rethink how we measure progress and how we define value in a world facing planetary limits. So today's session is based on his work heading towards an unsustainable world, where he connects SDG data, planetary health indicators, and systemic realities. This is a call to rethink how we lead, how we measure, and how we act. So, wherever you are joining from today, I invite you to be fully present. Listen not only for insights, but for implications, because the future we are shaping is not abstract, it is shared. So, Willie, the virtual stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Ray, for the kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this presentation titled Heading Towards an Unsustainable World. It's a webinar related to 60 years of IAQ and organized by the Quality and Planet Earth Concerns think tank. A little bit about me, but I don't want to add too much here because Ray did that perfectly. I have a long career in research, production, and quality. As said, ASQ Fellow, IAQ Academician. I'm the former chair of the Quality and Planet Earth Concerns think tank. I'm also the CEO of Quality for Nature and a board member of Alanta, a consulting agency in Belgium. Today, my work is about speaking and writing on quality management with a focus on quality management and sustainability. So let's have a look at more important things, and that is what I will be talking about. Now, this presentation is based on a very recently published article in LinkedIn with the same title, Heading Towards an Unsustainable World. You find the link on the slide here. The only difference with the article is that I've added a little bit at the beginning and I've added a little bit at the end. So at the beginning, I'll give a brief historical overview of sustainability with the focus on the word brief, just setting the scene, so to speak. Then we're going to look at what I call here the SDR, that's Sustainable Development Report 2025 data set. Because, of course, in quality, that's what we are, data-driven. So we're going to have a look at that data set. I'm first going to explain a little bit what the data set looks like. And then, of course, the most important part is what can we learn from the latest report, from the latest set of data. So we'll have a look at the state of sustainability. As this is Quality and Planet Earth Concerns, I'll put some special effort on the state of the planet within the overall sustainability thinking. And this is the part that's in the article. What I will add at the end is what do we need to change for a livable planet? It's a little bit of a spoiler here, but of course, this already indicates that the state of the planet is probably not doing very well. And I will try to show you that using different sources of data, as Ray was also referring to. Now, this brief historical overview, fundamentally, I think in recent years, the idea of sustainability came about because people started seeing a visible, and there's a word missing there, a visible negative impact of human activity, human economic activity on ecosystems, on nature, on things happening around us. As a simple example, I'm from Rouge in Belgium, Flanders. In my area, at some point in time, several rivers were biologically dead. So people saw fish dying and the like. So it created an awareness of this is not the right way to continue. There were some organizations created in 1961, the World Wildlife Fund, that in the beginning focused on some iconic species like tigers and panda bears, but later on focused very much on ecosystem maintenance. We had a very activistic group, very well known, Greenpeace, of course, that's 1971. In 1972, we had the Club of Rome report, which is also sort of an eye-opener, the well-known report Limits to Growth, basically saying the same thing as I just said. We cannot continue like we are doing right now. Okay. Now, this was taken up by the United Nations as a sort of a task that they saw for them, because of course the problems, these kinds of problems, are global problems, and the United Nations is the best forum to discuss these global problems. They created the Brundtland Commission, and in 1987 they gave their end report, which contained, among other things, a sustainable development definition. We'll come back to that later on. Around the same period, actually the year after, the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, was created, which means that at that time, and don't forget, this is almost 40 years ago, there was awareness that climate change could become a real serious global problem. And in 1992, maybe one of the most important moments was the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. Okay. And the key elements of that summit are that, one, they confirmed the sustainable development definition, and two, they defined the idea that sustainability or sustainable development consists of three elements: financial/economical, social, and environmental. Okay, so these are sort of like the global movements that led to also a sort of an organization of what sustainability is about. Now, this was fairly quickly translated into guidelines for businesses, for industry. Okay, industry being an important partner within global evolutions. And one of the very first systems, and still very well known, was started in 1994 by John Elkington, what he called the triple bottom line, or triple P. Triple P meaning people, planet, profit, in line with what the Earth Summit had defined: economic, social, and environmental. And as you can see, this was already started only 2 years after that Earth Summit. So that's an important one. Other things that followed were ISO standards, for instance, of which I guess the best known is the 14,000 series, which is a certifiable standard. And that was released, first version, in 1996, specifically tackling the environmental part. In 2010, ISO 26,000 was released, looking at social responsibility. This is a guideline, so not certifiable, but nevertheless, you see ISO standards being created. Then in 2004, a well-known term, ESG, was launched within the UN Global Compact, which is an organization of the UN, again, that combines companies, businesses that want to work on sustainability. And they released a report titled Who Cares Wins. And it was a report that was actually written by the financial institutions belonging to the UN Global Compact. And it's more or less the triple P, but with no P anymore, but E, S, and G, but basically referring to similar things. Because it came from the financial world, this is something that has often been used in the evaluation of investments. So it's become a sort of a financial element, a financial system, looking at evaluating the overall sustainability of investments, for instance. Okay. And then, as a last step, I'll refer to the EU Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, because this is legislation. So that is one step further. So what you saw happening was there's some awareness. We can't continue like that. We create definitions. We create systems for business, and these are free to apply or not apply systems. We get into standards, which become more directive. We get extra attention from finance, and we end up with legislation. Which means that if you fall under the requirements of this directive, you have no choice but to report according to this rule. So you see this evolution going on. Now, for the United Nations, of course, it's important to be able to see now how are we evolving. So we're looking for some sort of overall measuring and monitoring system. And, you know, the definition, the end result of the Brundtland Commission was 1987. But to set this up, it took them until 2000, you know, the iconic year 2000, of course, where they launched the Millennium Development Goals. And these are, you could say, the predecessors of the current Sustainable Development Goals. Now, the idea was, let's look long term and let's create like a 15-year cycle. And that should give us enough time to come to clear results. Okay, we should be able to see a positive evolution over a 15-year period. Now, the Millennium Development Goals, they look like this. And what you have here is eradicate extreme poverty and hunger, achieve universal education, gender equality, and then a couple of indicators that are all health related. Basically, if you think triple P-like, this 1 to 6 are people oriented. Okay, they have to do with the well-being of people, not being hungry, not being extremely poor, having education, having gender equality, and having good health care for all. The 7th one is the planet. Okay, ensure environmental sustainability. It's a very general one, but it is focusing on planet. The 8th one is, it's not really a goal, I think. The 8th one is more, how do we need to go about this to be successful? And it's pretty simple. We will have to do it all together. We need a global partnership to achieve this development. So what you notice basically in the Millennium Development Goals is that you have the people and planet, but you don't really have the profit part, the economic part within these targets. Okay. Now, come 2015, the observation was, well, we're not going as well as we should. So we need a second 15-year cycle. However, we need improved, better, more detailed targets. And these targets are the Sustainable Development Goals. Okay. And they look like this. Now, if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals and the logic behind it, it's not a 3P, it's a 5P logic, actually, where the ones we know, people, planet, prosperity instead of profit, they come back, but there's also peace and there's partnership. Now, the colors I use here is to show the comparison with the Millennium Goals, because 1 to 5 are actually the 1 to 6 Millennium Goals. These are all the people goals: poverty, hunger, health, education, gender equality. The planet part, that was just one, Millennium Goal 7, has been divided into various aspects. Clean water is one, and then the others start at 12. And you see things like climate, and you see things like biodiversity that are referred to in various separate goals. The big change compared to the Millennium Goals is the prosperity part. This is the economic part that has been added to it compared to the Millennium Goals. And these are 5 goals focusing on that aspect. I'll talk about the Sustainable Development Solutions Network in a second, because they were responsible for creating this and they're responsible for following it up. But within SDSN, there's Professor Jeffrey Sachs, who's a very well-known economist, and it's not abnormal that economy was added to that. It is in line with the triple P model, of course, and the conclusion of the Earth Summit. So prosperity becomes important. Energy is in here. Economic growth becomes a goal in itself. There's infrastructure, there's inequality, there's sustainable cities and communities. And another one added, but that's only one indicator, is peace. Okay. And then the partnership is the repetition of 8 of the Millennium Goals. So this is what it looks like. Now, to clarify, this looks like 17 things, but in reality, it's a lot more data, because each of these are further refined in targets, and each of these targets is then referring to some indicators. You know, as an example, zero hunger is subdivided into 8 targets, and in total 14 indicators. So 14 different data points need to be gathered in order to say something about these 8 targets, and that is then turned into one number for zero hunger. And that's the case for all of these SDGs. So behind it is a much more detailed system. Okay. And who does all that work? Because that's a lot of work, of course. That's the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network. And you have a link here to their website, which is a very important website, because, in fact, every year they launch a report. To be quite honest, they launch several reports on specific topics, sometimes on regions, but they have one yearly overall report looking at the entire world. And they also release all the data that was used to make up that report. All of that costs you nothing. The only thing you need to do is go there and download. Okay, it's all there. You can download it in various forms. I took the most simple form, an Excel file. You all know Excel, so it's very easy to download that Excel file. So you can download that Excel file. And actually, one of the things I hope this presentation might end with is that people start indeed doing that. Download these databases, have a look. Maybe you can have a look at how your country is doing, how your region is doing. Perhaps you're interested in the state of healthcare, so you can analyze it by topic. It's a load of fantastic information, all for free. These are the editors of the report and the managers of the data. And this is the reference used for everything I will say from now on using SDG data. Okay, I'll give you a little bit of explanation on the data set. And it's an Excel file, so it consists of worksheets. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 worksheets. I won't go into all the details. You can easily see what's in there. I'll just talk about 2 things. The first one is the overview, because this is probably the best known and the one that is most reported on. It gives you a ranking. We love ranking. It gives you a ranking of countries according to their SDG score. And then you can see that Finland is the most sustainable, then Sweden, Denmark, and so on with their score. It goes down to, in total, 169 countries in the 2025 report, of which they have enough data to make an overall assessment. Okay, so that's one sheet that's very well known, and then you have all the indices behind it, 1 to 17, with an indication whether they are improving, slightly getting worse, slightly improving, staying the same, or getting worse. Okay, so that gives you a good overview. The data I use for this presentation are the backdated SDG index data, and out of that, I take world data. You know, as again, we're talking about how are we globally evolving. I took the world data and I took the data. The latest data point in the 2025 report is 2024. So I took that, of course, that's the latest data I have. And I went down to 2015, okay, which means 9 years. Now, don't underestimate that, because the total period foreseen at the start was 2015, 2030. That's 15 years. We are now 9 years in that cycle. So about 60% of the foreseen time has passed. So we should be seeing how things are evolving. Okay, we're already clearly behind a half time. Okay, so this is what I will be using. And I want to start, if you are going to download files and evaluate them, with a little warning. And it may seem strange, but every year there's a report. And the 2025 report contains 2024 data as the latest data point. Now, you could think, well, actually, that 2025 report, or the data set, will be exactly the same as the 2024, with just one line added. Okay, the 2024 report went to 2023, so with just one line added. However, it doesn't work that way, and the reason it doesn't is because of the complexity of all this data gathering. And countries report, but not all countries report equally fast. So sometimes some of these indicators for 2023, for instance, can only be found back or are only reported in 2025. So the numbers can change a little bit with time. And what this graph is showing is I took the 2025 report and looked at 2023 data. I took the 2024 report and looked at 2023 data. And this is the difference in these numbers, okay? Now, most of these differences are small. Some are medium. There might be specific reasons for this. In SPC terms, we could talk about random variation and special variation. It's not a control chart, but nevertheless, that's what you could see here. Now, the random variation has to do with what I was just saying. Change data, incomplete data, added data, small changes, and so on. However, sometimes, and in the 2025 report, very importantly, you see big changes. And this goal 10, SDG 10, and that is inequality, has a change of 25 points compared to the 2 reports for the same year. 25 points on a 100-point scale is quite a difference. Okay, so I contacted SDSN, and I have to thank Mr. Grayson Fuller, one of the editors, for replying. And what has happened is that they were using, one of the indicators is the Palma ratio. That's the income of the top 10% divided by the bottom 40% income, so a measurement of inequality. They were using that from an OECD database. They saw some strange things in there. They had some doubts, and they shifted, and that's what says change in source. They shifted that to World Bank data. But that data had big differences in numbers of this indicator for China and India. Now, China and India combined, that's close to 40% of world population. So, of course, if that's a big difference, that'll have a big influence on the world number. Okay, so the big difference was 25 points. Without having changed anything to equality, the only thing that has been done is using another data source. It can be a bit confusing, I have to say, but of course, they calculate all older data back using now this data source. So all years change by about 25 points. What does it mean? You can only analyze within a report, not between a report. Okay. As an example, I did an analysis last year on the 2024 report when this was 25 points lower. And one of my conclusions was that inequality was the lowest of all indicators and the only one below 50%. That is no longer true, given this change. So you need to analyze within a yearly report, within a yearly data set. Don't compare between data sets. Okay, that's just a warning. Good. Now, that was a big explanation about how the system, where it's coming from and how it works. So what is it telling us? And the first question is, are we moving in the right direction? Yes, we are. We are going up. But of course, you have to be very careful when you look at a graph. This is a good example of how to lie with graphics, because this is the same data, but put in the scale that we use for these numbers, it's between 0 and 100, and it still goes up, but you get a better view for the fact that it is snail rate, okay? We go up, but we go up very, very slowly. And I have to say, there's an additional observation that makes me worried even more. And that's the next graph using the same data. That's this. Now, the graph is called yearly increase. It's basically a yearly change, but until now, it's always been an increase. So if you look at the 2016 result and you compare it with the 2015 World SDG result, the 2016 value was 0.34 higher than 2015. So you each time see the yearly change. And luckily, it was an increase. However, as of 2019, 2020, that increase became smaller and smaller and smaller. And, you know, the snail is tiring, huh? Or it's getting older and not as fast as it used to be either. But this is not the right direction to go. And what is most worrying is the last number, 0.02. Basically, it means between 2024 and 2023, we didn't see any change whatsoever. We're no longer improving. The improvement itself was slow, but at least it was still an improvement. Now, it seems to have come to a standstill. Yeah. And if we see that line, it's not very promising for the future. Of course, given the timing here, you would probably, I didn't investigate that, but I would link it to COVID, of course, and the COVID crisis. However, this is pointing towards a long COVID effect, and that's something we really do not want, I think. Okay, so that's one. We're improving way too slow, and the improvement is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. The second thing is, are we balanced? Because we have 5 Ps now in our model, and are they all improving in the same, are they all improving? So by definition in the same direction, and equally fast. Well, not really. What you can see is that the prosperity part, so the thing that was added to have economic sustainability within the model, has shown the biggest increase, 6.2. Well, I don't know if that's big. It's still, remember, it's a period of 9 years, but it's 6.2. The second biggest one is people, 3, about half of this. There's one of the P's that has gone down, and that is peace. Basically, you could say 2024 was less peaceful than 2015. We're going in the wrong direction. And then there are 2, planet and partnership, that seem to be more or less, well, you can call this an improvement, but over 9 years on a 100 point scale, let's say they haven't gotten worse. Okay. Now, we can detail this even further, and this is by looking at this difference by SDG. And fundamentally, this is the average, the 3.1 improvement overall. There's really only one SDG that really shows a breakthrough, and that's SDG 9. And, you know, if all of them would have shown something like that, we would have made really, really big progress and have a more sustainable world. Unfortunately, it hasn't. Now, SDG 9 is industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So we have done a lot of investment, we have created innovations, we have set up infrastructure. And the numbers changed from 55 to 71. It's quite impressive. So plus 16 over 9 years, that's almost 2 points a year every year. I called it here an inconvenient. You could say, well, this is a very convenient observation. We're heading in the right direction. But the inconvenient part of it is that if you look at SDG 2, of the 17, only 2 went down. The peace, of course, that you already saw, but also goal 2, zero hunger. And it's a bit, well, I call it inconvenient. There are probably better words for it, but it's a bit remarkable to see that we have created an unbelievable amount of additional wealth and have not been able to improve the situation on one of the basic things you would want to see in this planet, that at least everyone has access to food. Okay, so that's not a good thing. And now I want to go a little bit deeper on the planetary part. As said, this is organized by the Quality and Planet Earth Concerns think tank. And the question is, should we be concerned about planet Earth? According to the SDG analysis, well, as I said, it's very slow snail. 1.6 in 9 years is not a big improvement, but at least it hasn't gotten worse. So the idea you get looking at the planet indicators from SDG is that basically the state of the planet in 2024 is more or less the same as it was in 2015. Unfortunately, that is not the case. So these numbers do not reflect reality. And I just showed you one of the indicators, SDG 10, that was changed because of a new data source. I really think it's important for SDSN to review their planetary indicators to get a better result that is more in line with reality. Why am I saying this? Well, let's look at SDG 13, climate action. Okay, I love the title because it's the only one that has the word action in it. And action is the only thing that will get us better. But if you look at this SDG 13 evolution from 2000 to 2024, that's the last data, basically comparing also to the others, goal 13 is the highest scoring of all SDGs. And has been like that because, you know, look at the scale again, this is between 87.5 and 88.5 and 89.5 sort. It's close to excellent. If all of these were at this level, we would live in paradise. This graph is saying we live in a climate paradise. I'll show you data in a second that sort of put some question marks to that. I said goal 10 was the lowest. Now goal 16, peace, is the lowest. I don't know if that's a big improvement, but anyway, it's an observation. But going back to climate, and this is where I used different data. And I used data from the Copernicus program of the EU, which is sort of the climate database of the EU. Again, all this data is freely available, can be downloaded. And what you see here, the blue points are the delta T values. That's the ERA5 database. This is the comparison between average yearly temperature in a certain year, let's say in 2000, compared to pre-industrial. Okay, so these are the blue points. I put that in Excel. I had Excel calculate a linear and a quadratic regression line. The quadratic line is the best fitting. But what you observe, if you look at the last part, this is 2015. This is 2025. Okay, this was 2024. Now, if you take that linear regression, the 11 points since 2015, which was also the start of the Paris Agreement, these 11 points are all above the linear regression line, the linear prediction. 8 of the 11 are above the quadratic prediction. And actually, these 11 points since 2015, the start of the Paris Agreement, are the 11 highest points on record. Okay. So the conclusion is quite clear. It's impossible to say that the state of the climate index, that the state of climate has not changed over these years, and that overall this period we have done extremely well from a point of view of climate change, which should come from SDG 13. That would be the conclusion that we would take. If you take the predictions, I used it to predict 2050, the linear model says by 2050 it'll be 1.53, which is a bit silly, because if you look at these last 3 points, by 2025 it was already something like 1.53. So this is probably more viable as a prediction if we don't do anything in between. That's 2.40. If you go to 2100, that's 5.18. Now, I know people will say, yeah, 2050 and 2100, that's a long way. But I don't know the age of the participants, but if you're among the younger participants, this is what your children will be experiencing, and this is what your grandchildren will be experiencing. So it is less far off than we sometimes think. In fact, if it is this, it's a serious problem, of course. So this SDG 13 in no way reflects the reality of climate change. And I think in the same way, the other planet indicators aren't showing what reality is like. And again, I took some other data from the planetary boundaries science. I'll go immediately to this. This is a system a bit like the SDGs, but in this case with 9 objectives, 9 boundaries for the planet, and some of the boundaries have more than one indicator, as I explained for the SDGs as well. And what you see here is that, I'll put this on, you can look at this, of the 9 defined boundaries, 7 have been crossed. That's 78%. And that is worse than in 2015, when 7 boundaries were assessed. There was not enough data for the others, and 4 had crossed, and that was 57%. But the big problem is, if you look at the indicators, several of them, climate change is one of them here, they are too close, but also biogeochemical flows, biosphere integrity, they are beyond the high risk line, and they are worsening. Okay, so we really need to be careful. Taking all that into account, I made a prediction under the title, Predicting is Difficult, Especially the Future. Nevertheless, I will try. And the problem is that, in my view, the future of sustainable development does not look bright. Peace is not really underway today. Climate change is neglected at a moment when it is getting out of control. You see rich countries reducing their aid to poor countries, which is going to have an effect on the people indicators in the future, for sure. Partnerships are being broken up, and that's a big problem. Basically, I hear people talk about nothing else but competing. I'm afraid we might be competing ourselves into extinction. Now, someone warned for this early on, a guy you wouldn't expect it to do it, and that was John Elkington. The guy who launched the triple P model in 1994 recalled it in 2018. And he had some reasons for that. He said this is not a balancing act or a trade-off. He called it triple bottom line. These are equally important. Profit, social, environment. You can't weigh them out. You can't say, well, my profit has increased by 6, the planet has decreased by 3, I'm still 3 more sustainable. It doesn't work that way. It's been diluted by accountants and reporting consultants. I'm mad at the EU because they created a standard on sustainability, calling it a reporting standard. The report will always look nice. We have great PR departments. This was meant to change capitalism, but the single bottom line paradigm still rules. He had a nice sentence. It's not about being best in the world, but about being best for the world. And I think this is our holistic quality leadership challenge. We need to be good in the world, of course. We need to keep on surviving as an organization, but we also need to be good for the world. And the question is, where did we go wrong and where do we go wrong? Because, you know, it's nice to say it's not going the right way. How could we change it and you know, make the tanker go into the other direction? The one thing I think is that we started off wrongly. The Brundtland definition is not a good definition. It is not a sustainable definition. And I know this is probably very controversial. However, this is the definition. Sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present generation. I added of people between the brackets there, without compromising the ability of future generations of people to meet their own needs. Now, the whole thing was started because we saw the negative effect of human activities on the environment, but the definition basically says the planet and everything on it is there to satisfy the needs of one species. That can never, ever be sustainable. We need to look at the broader picture, the overall system. The overall system is the biosphere. So my proposal, sustainability means that the present generation takes the necessary actions to pass on our unique biosphere to the next generation in a better state than it was received, and so on. All life matters. We need systems thinking of the entire planet, because it is not people and plants and animals and air, and it is all of that working together. We're all interdependent, and we need to take care of all life if we are to preserve ours. Okay, so that's one. The second thing is we need to see the planet as it is, and we don't do that today. We think the planet looks like this. And it consists of all sorts of small parts, as you see, with different colors here, because they're all different countries. And if you think about climate change, we have Conference of the Parties, and from all of these colored parts, people fly to one place. Kazakhstan was there last year or the year before. They talk for 2 or 3 weeks, they fly all back, nothing happens. Why doesn't anything happen? Because they fly over there with the idea, I need to get the best possible deal for my little patch, for my color. Doesn't work that way. The planet doesn't look like that. The planet looks like this. There are no boundaries. There are no small colored boxes. There's one biosphere. If we want to change, if we want to have any success out of the COP meetings, and they become very critical given the state of the planet and the increased heating of it, everybody needs to go there with the same goal. We need to work together to safeguard the biosphere that needs to take care of all life. In fact, when I say all life, this is actually all life in the universe. It's even beyond just planet Earth. It's all life, all known life in the universe. Okay. And another point that you need to be careful about is when you look at the SDGs, because, Elkington saying we need to be good in the world and good for the world, or my paraphrase of that, that's not always the case. And I made a graph here. This is the SDG rank from 0 to 169. I said 169 are ranked. So this is Finland. Yeah. On the horizontal axis, this is Finland, 18, this is Belgium. This is the top 20. But in the SDG database, you also find a spillover index. And the spillover index is showing you what your impact is on the sustainability of the rest of the world. I'll give a simple example. We all know that cement industry and steel industry are industries that have a lot of greenhouse gas exhaust as a consequence, mainly CO2, of course. Now, as a country, you could decide, I'll stop producing cement, I'll stop producing steel. That's good. That'll help you in your sustainability. But of course, if you say, but I won't stop consuming it, I'll start buying it from other places, that's really nice for your SDG. You'll get better in the ranking. But of course, you'll have a negative effect on the people that make it for you. Basically, you can say you can produce the world to death, but you can also consume it to death. And maybe the latter faster than the former. And you can see that a little bit, because this is the top 20, up here, until here, this is the top 20 in SDG, but the best one is rank 120 in spillover. Okay, so be careful about that. We may be good for ourselves, but not necessarily good for the world. Some other data shows that Finland, for instance, if the entire planet were to live like Finland, we would need 3 or 4 planets. We don't have them. There's only one. Okay, so we need to think much wider. Also, if we're scoring well on SDGs, trying to reduce our negative impact on the rest of the world. And I think we need to understand that continuing to rely on growth and efficiency will not be enough. Many efficiency gains are annihilated by growth. If we make planes twice as fuel efficient, but we fly 4 times more, it's not going to help. Many of our problems today, especially in the rich world, are related to too much food obesity, too many cars, traffic jams, too much energy consumption, global warming, and so on and so on. So we don't need more. I love technology. I'm an engineer, and I think technology can play a major part, but we must not think that technology will solve all our problems. I showed you the data from era 5, Copernicus. That's 1940, 2025. That's 85 years. And what we see now is that heating is speeding up. It's getting worse faster. In that 85 years, there was never, technological development was never forbidden. It still wasn't able to bend the curve that is obviously needed. We need to bring the economy within planetary boundaries. Of course, I'm not the first one to say that. There's a very famous donut model by Kate Raworth who basically says the same. We need a minimum economy to guarantee basic things to all people on the planet, but that economy must not break ecological ceilings. We must avoid overshoot. And, the latest data shows that of the 9 characteristics, we already have 7 overshoots. And at the same time, we're still not able to solve a food problem for the entire planet. So we need to come to a quality economy. Quality-driven, not quantity-driven, well-being over wealth. And I think this is, I guess, the message I want to bring most of all. In the end, more or less is irrelevant. Only better matters. And better is a quality term. We need to improve. And improve can be more in some places for some things, but it is definitely less for other things in other places. We need to go to a quality economy for all life. And that's one of the subjects that within the Quality and Planet Earth Concerns think tank, we want to work on somewhat more. One of the other people is my dear friend Ram, the founder and father of our think tank. So if any one of you sees this as interesting, do contact me and let me know if you're interested in working on that sort of concepts. With us, we can always use additional knowledge. There's never enough knowledge. And with that, I want to thank you very much. Through this, you can find my LinkedIn page. And I also want to refer to my book, Reflections on Quality in 10.5 columns, where you find these ideas and some others on quality. Thank you so much. Ray, over to
Wow.
you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Willy, for that insightful and thought-provoking presentation. You have given us not only data, but really perspective, not only analysis, but a challenge for us to rethink how we define progress and responsibility. So we invite everyone, if you have some questions, you can share right here in the chat box. By the way, really, while we're waiting for maybe one to two questions coming from our participants, based on your analysis, what is that one uncomfortable truth about sustainability that leaders today still struggle to accept?
I think, oh, there's so many, but if you would want, I think the one where I said we need to work together. You know, I think one of the best statements on geopolitics ever made was by the British singer Sting when he wrote his song Russians, and he said, "I hope the
Mhm.
Russians love their children too." And I think today, if biosphere had a voice, they would probably say, "I hope humans love their children too," because we're really going the wrong way. And we need to think about our children and give them a more sustainable future.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much for that, Willie. And you highlighted, right, in your presentation that SDG progress may not fully reflect reality, especially for the planetary health. What do you believe needs to change in how we measure sustainability?
Well, I think, first of all, let me make it clear what is being done with the SDGs is amazing work. You know, it's a
Mhm.
massive database. It's fantastic work. The people that work on that, they're great people. They're responsive also, of course. But I do think it would be worthwhile to have a look at all the details, the detailed indicators that are related to the planetary indices to see
Mhm.
if, you know, I mean, biodiversity is a serious problem, and life on land, life below water doesn't seem to change in the index. So maybe there's something missing there. I showed the climate aspect, which is really something that is not even contradictory, I think. If
Mhm.
you see the reality versus the SDG index.
Mhm.
So I think, yeah, that there it would be worthwhile to focus on that. And actually, I will pass this on also to Grayson Fuller, who was kind enough to answer the the question I had about the inequality there.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
here we are.
Yeah. And what I'm sensing really is that, it's not only the responsibility of a Willie, it's a responsibility of everyone for us to really look into the data because it's everyone's concern at the end of the day. Um, I'm just checking if there's a question right here in the chat box, but another question that I have of really, from leadership perspective, what kind of leadership mindset is required for us to move from awareness to real systemic change?
Well, I think first of all, it's important that people get confronted more with the data. You know, it's not just awareness; it's also the drive to do something. So that's one. And the second thing, what John Elkington said in 2018, I refer to that. It was actually a Harvard Business Review article slash interview where he said that this idea for a leader of any organization, we need to be good in the world, but we also need to be good for the world. That really seeing, people, profit, planet, he withdrew it because he said, basically, I see it being used almost as a greenwashing machine. And that was not the purpose of it. Really see that as bottom line. All CEOs will report about the bottom line. They will be evaluated on that bottom line result. Well, these are three bottom lines, and really treat them as such. It's something we also need to think about. Okay, so we focus on profit, but we also need to think about, no, you need to focus on all three. What is our impact on the planet? And actually, I think today, if you think in risk thinking and survival of a company, it's worthwhile starting to think, what is the impact of the environment on us? Because with climate change, you will get factories in areas that never saw flooding that will start seeing flooding, that never had serious fires that will start seeing fires. So it's I think smart from a risk analysis point of view to start thinking also the other way, and then see how can we avoid that.
Very insightful. Thank you so much for that, Willy. There's a lot of comments right here in the chat box. They love the presentation. I totally agree. Definitely, I couldn't agree more of that. Maybe last question from me, Willy, since there's no one who would like to ask a question right here. I'm just curious, like if the current trajectory continues, what are the most critical risks we may face in the next like 10 to 20 years?
I think extreme weather events.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's really gonna, because that'll have immediate toll on people. It'll be killing people. I mean, extreme weather events are, in my view, the first. We already noticed that today, to be quite honest, but you'll see that more. And as a result, areas where people don't want to live anymore. So you'll see mass migration if that is happening. Actually, I think that one of the industries that could have the biggest force to put it in the right direction is the insurance industry. Because you see places in the world where you can't insure your activities anymore. So that has a serious impact on people and on businesses because they can't carry it anymore. They can't carry it anymore. So that's, I think, that's one thing that could force organizations in the right direction, even if they wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah. Can I ask one personal question, really? Since I can always sense that you are a positive person. My question is like after decades in quality and sustainability, what gives you hope today?
Well, the hope is a bit of a special thing. I don't want to expand too much, but what I think, what gives hope or what is positive are positive actions from people, from organizations, and unfortunately, I have to say most of it is coming from the bottom. So it are small things, but if there are enough of small things, it can still create a big movement. It would be good if this would be, how shall I put it? If there would also be more support from the higher level, from the top. It's happening bottom up now, which is good, but it will need top-down support for sure if we want to be successful. Because it's going bad fast. So it's not as if we have 20 years to wait and to see what happens. By then, too much will have happened. That's the point. I want to make one small comment also for the people participating. If you would have questions that you come up afterwards, don't hesitate to contact me. You've had my mail and my LinkedIn page. There's only one Willy Vandenbrande on LinkedIn. That's already bad enough. So that's
There's only
no
one amazing
problem.
Willy.
Something like that.
Thank
Yeah.
you,
Well, you
thank
say
you.
that.
Thank you so much for that, Willy. And if we can give another round of applause, your big hand, virtual clap, whatever emojis that you have in there for Willy, please share it right here in the Zoom. So thank you so much once again, Willy, for sharing your expertise and your conviction. We definitely felt it. By the way, for everyone, we invite you to take a moment to evaluate how we did today. I'm sharing the link right here in the chat box. We appreciate your feedback. So today's session definitely reminds us that sustainability is not, just a concept. It's a present responsibility. So as we celebrate the 60 years of IAQ or International Academy for Quality, we are reminded that quality has always evolved with the needs of the society, from inspection to system excellence, and now to something deeper, quality as a force for sustaining life itself. The message today of Billy is very clear, and progress must be re-examined. Metrics must be challenged. Leadership must rise, because the question is no longer whether we can improve. The question is whether we can improve in ways that truly matter. So, to everyone who joined us today, thank you for being part of this global conversation. Definitely, we will share the presentation with the approval coming from Willy. Willy already shared it over to me, so I'll definitely share it over to all of the participants today. We'll also upload the recording of today's session to the IAQ YouTube channel. So please await for that link that we'll be sharing in the social media accounts that we have. So please follow us on LinkedIn and on Facebook as well. So let this not end as a webinar. Let this begin as a commitment. And on behalf of the International Academy for Equality, thank you so much. Please stay engaged. Continue shaping a future where quality serves not only organizations, but humanity and our planet. Have a meaningful day, everyone. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you all. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye bye.